And welcome to College Football Tradition, a history of American college football, 1881. My name is Brian Partika, joined alongside my bro host and co-host Jacob Vanderford. We're here to talk about the 1881 season and bridging the East. So, college football, to lay a little backstory, spread tremendously throughout the Northeast during the 1880s. And actually, with the exception of Brown, whose program was kind of on and off for about 8 years, from 78 to 86, all of the current Ivy League schools, all eight of them, bolstered a program. So Brown was on and off, but everybody else was off and running to the races. College football programs began to develop in the East, even into like the Midwest, what we know of as today. So they took full advantage of wanting to grow the game. And one thing that I'm so impressed with this season is the Michigan Wolverines. So in their second or third season of college football, they decided to go all the way to the Northeast and play the big three. They played Harvard, Yale, and Princeton all on the road, and they played him in a 5-day stretch from Halloween, October 31st, to November 4th. They played the big three of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. They lost all three games, but it was a tremendous stretch for the sport because Michigan's Fred Townsend, he wrote about the trip and he said, most of us Michigan players had never played in a match game, and some of us had never seen a copy of the rules. So even think about that. They didn't even know the rules in the games that they were playing beforehand. That's like if I pulled out a Monopoly board in front of you, Jacob, and you had never played before and you just started playing and you had to play with me, someone who you know is
Oh
really good
God.
at Monopoly.
I mean that's pretty much what happened to us when we were in Scotland and playing Monopoly. I hadn't played the game in like years, and you over here like the goat at it and like absolutely thrashing me.
And that's
I was Michigan and you were Princeton. That's a good analogy.
that's essentially what happened here because the games were not even close. Harvard beat Michigan 4-0. Yale won 11-0, and Princeton won 13-4. So at least Michigan was able to get on the board. But those games weren't close. Those mid-afternoon games at the time, all on the road, and I'm sure that Michigan left pretty beat up. But they view that season, that 1881 Michigan team, is really recognized in the Wolverine football program because that bolstered them to the next level. It was a turning point for the program, and it was one that showed what it took to win at a high level, how you had to really commit to formulating a team. You had to commit to spring practice. You had to commit to having players develop younger players. And that was what that Michigan team did. And they are absolutely a beacon of success for what that Michigan program is today, which is the winningest program in college football history.
It's also crazy to me that like that team, the 0-3 Michigan team, is like the worst record of any Wolverine team of all time.
Yeah.
Like you'd think like there would have been like just a random year where they like lost more games than they won or whatever that might have been. But no, like this is the worst team that they'd ever seen. And I think that's a testament to the coaching, the development there at Michigan, the amount of wins and championships and all those things. And it started here. I mean, it started in 1881, taking that leap of faith. And it took a lot of courage to just be like, yeah, we're probably going to get killed by these teams, but we're going to know what the rules are. We're going to know how to play, and we're going to know what it takes to be the best. And so I think that just kind of shows, even today, like as we're looking at teams that are trying to build programs, like it starts by learning from other teams that are at that point. Like you think about in Alabama with Nick Saban, think about in Ohio State with Urban Meyer, like all those years, like those are the teams that these teams wanted to beat. So I think that just says a lot about Michigan at the time and their desire to be the best again.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And obviously they built the infrastructure after that to be successful. And another program that was in their first year, it was Penn State. So we were looking at a lot of the Big Ten. A lot of the Big Ten as we started to expand to the Midwest as we know of today, which back then it was not known as the Midwest. So they started to form and really when Harvard and Yale and Princeton and some of those Ivy League schools were looking at these programs at these bigger state schools out west, they were looking at it as like, no, those schools are in the West. And it's one of the reasons why the Big Ten's initial name was the Western Conference. And that's because a lot of the schools that were joining it, not Penn State for about 100 more years, but they were viewed as the Western part of the country at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's cool to see some of these schools that we know and some of us love, some of us don't. Today with Michigan and Penn State, and Penn State obviously joining the fray. It's so interesting to hear that it was the Western Conference, but I mean that's what it was back then. Like we didn't have teams where, or I mean, you couldn't really travel that far to get to California and Oregon, like stuff like that. So as the sport is growing, it's really great to see these Northeast schools trying to expand and play some of these other teams. And yeah, like we talked about, Penn State, this is their first year. They played Lewisburg, now known as Bucknell, not a real blue blood of college football, but Penn State played them. And again, it was their first ever college game. And multiple newspapers reported about the game. Penn State reportedly, it looks like, beat Bucknell 9-0. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, 9-0. Yeah,
Okay.
by Penn
Yeah.
State.
So
Yeah.
so they slaughtered them pretty much. And the Mirror is one of these newspapers of the day that was reporting about college football. They reported about the game. That was the Bucknell school newspaper actually, and but Bucknell, the team, denies that the game ever happened because they just got killed by so much by Penn State. And I think that will be kind of a jumping off point always as we see Penn State continue to grow as a football program.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes me wonder with Bucknell, the university and the program denying that the game ever happened, it makes me think how many other games do they do
Yeah.
programs claim never happened? How many other records are we not really seeing because of things like this? And obviously schools can get together and have any type of contest. I could come from Ohio State and I could go to Akron University and we could play a chess match and there might not be any recordings of that. So I do understand it, but it's really interesting to see the ones that were recorded and the ones that weren't recorded and when those things start to pop up.
Yeah, well, I mean, why? Yeah, why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's because some of these other programs were just so established in the college football scene, and like they were able to reach out to some of these media newspaper outlets to help document those things, or do these teams and programs just kind of like throw away and just burn metaphorically all the different things that did document it? I don't know. I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I think it was kind of like that Michigan story when they go out to play Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Fred Townsend talks about this is the first time I've seen a copy of the rules. So we knew that these schools were meeting and having meetings and discussing the rules of the game and trying to find uniformity and conformity in that. But it wasn't until a while, years that would go by, that the rules would really be able to spread across the country. And we'll see it very soon, where schools in Oregon and Washington and California, I mean, it doesn't take them that long to develop a program. It's only going to be a few more seasons here that we'll talk about. So it takes a couple years to get across the country to those universities. And I think that that's when they really start to see that, we're developing a program and we could actually have records of this and we're going to be able to record these games. We're going to be able to record scores. We're going to be able to record attendance numbers as well. And that's where we get to with the end of the 1881 season. It capped off just like any other season that we've had before, and that's Princeton and Yale coming together and playing to a 0-0 tie. Princeton, they finished this year 7-0-2. They played 9 games that year, folks. Yale finished the year 5-1, so they both tied each other. Totally okay with naming both Princeton and Yale national champions. And when it comes to our pick one champion, it's Yale's victory over Harvard that propels them, in my mind at least. And Jacob, I'm curious to see if you agree. Yale's victory over Harvard, a team that Princeton tied. I think that that's why the Yale Bulldogs deserve claim to this title.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you there, but I might push back just a little bit in terms of where the Princeton argument could come into play. I think just like the amount of games that they played and how taxing and arduous that season was for them. Like you think about, I mean, you look at the cost. You can look up any picture online, see like the costumes, the uniforms that they wore. They kind of look like costumes. But the uniforms that they wore, they didn't have helmets, they didn't have pads, they didn't have like, protective gear as they're like tackling one another and like beating each other up. Like, I mean, you could have so many injuries during those years that took players out and like all those different things. So there's so many different factors that I feel like go into it. And a tie to me, like, I don't know. I don't really equate it to like a loss or anything. Like Yale tied as well, and Princeton has more wins than them. So I don't know. Like I think I could see it going either way. Um, I mean, I would give it to Yale as well, just with the win that they had and like the strength of the schedule and the wins that they did have. But I think Princeton definitely deserves some recognition just because of the amount of games that they played.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. I think that's why I'm totally okay with both of them claiming a national championship and both of them being recognized as national championships under NCAA retroactive standards. But at the same time, like you bring up a good point. Like the number of games being played has to matter. And not only did and not only did Princeton tie Harvard that year, a team that Yale beat, but Princeton tied Harvard 5 days before they played Yale. And then they went in and tied Yale. So it was really impressive 5 day stretch for Princeton where they go in and they play a really tough Harvard team. I mean, this Harvard team finished 6-1-1. This was a really good
Yeah.
team. I mean, if they don't lose to Yale, then we're talking about Harvard, the Crimson, as national champions as well.
Yeah, I mean you're right. That Harvard that win for Yale against Harvard definitely should push them over the top. And I think quickly I just wanted to mention about we talked about the attendance record, and it's so interesting. Like back then, we talked about previous episodes how the crowds are starting to stack up and watch these games more and more. This 1881 season, that Princeton Yale game, the crowd was an estimated about 10,000 people. So this is the first time in college football history where that a crowd like that exceeded 5 digits for an attendance. And so I feel like it's been such a competition in college football over the past few years to see like how many people you can sardine into a stadium. And I know my Cornhuskers talked about them a lot. They've got that over 400 attendance record, sold out streak. We'll see if anybody can touch on it in the future. Highly doubt it, but it's really cool to see all these different teams like Kyle Field, Texas A&M, like huge stadium, and it's close to sold out every single time. You think about Tennessee, almost sold out every single time. All these different places that house so many attendance and again, it starts back like it comes back to this 1881 season with this amount, this 10,000 amount, and it's just going to keep growing and growing. And also, fun fact, like this past year, Yale and Princeton in the Yale Bowl, they only had about 7,500 people attend that game. So you think about that in 1881 compared to 2024, like that's over two centuries pretty much, where like the attendance record was higher back in 1881 compared to 2024, which is just astounding.
That is absolutely crazy. I mean, I know Princeton and Yale are FCS, and also important to note, I think we did in one of our earlier episodes of this series that now Ivy League schools are eligible for FCS playoffs, which is great. That means the Ivy League champion will automatically get into the FCS playoffs, so that's great, and I think will help propel this game a little bit more going forward. But the fact that there were more people at this game at a neutral site, because it was played at Polo Grounds again in New York, there were over 10,000 people there compared to 7,500 this past year, is absolutely astonishing, and just shows how big this rivalry was at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy. Some unblemished recognitions that we want to give out as well. Georgetown, they went 1-0 this season. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, now known as obviously MIT, they went 3-0 this season.
Hey, that's huge.
That is huge. Penn State, we talk about their 1-0 season as even though Bucknell claims the season never happened for Penn State. And then you have Richmond, the current FCS squad, the Spiders. They went 2-0. Who'd they play in that year? Oh, they played Randolph-Macon. They played at Randolph-Macon in Ashland,
Who the
Virginia.
heck is that?
Who is that?
Sounds-
Randolph-Macon College. Huh.
Oh, Ashland, Virginia, eh?
That's so weird. Huh. Interesting. They're a current Division III school. Huh.
Whoa.
A lot of current Division III um, schools.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's college football, baby.
That's just college football, and a lot of schools that would not bolster programs after this as well. And I also want to note that in the previous season, 1880, we talked about Kentucky University, which is now Transylvania University. Um, they were having their first season in 1880, but 1881, Kentucky State College, which is the actual University of Kentucky today, they had their first season. So, and they had all games against each other. So, Transylvania versus Kentucky.
Pennsylvania and Kentucky.
Pennsylvania and Kentucky. Man, a lot of things going on in Lexington.
Yeah, there's
During
so many teams like this year. I like it's
yeah.
so awesome for college football just like to see the evolution of teams being like, "Hey, I want to join that. I want to do that." Like it's going to be interesting to see like moving forward now like if there are any teams that join college football in the future that maybe don't have a team right now or just like how does that continue to occur over time?
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it the University of Texas at Rio Grande that's starting an FCS program?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Rio Grande Valley or something.
Yeah, Rio Grande Valley, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're starting a program. And then we see schools like St. Francis in Pennsylvania, an FCS school, but they're a Division I school overall. They're dropping down to Division III in athletics.
Dang.
Yeah. Whew. I don't know. A lot of things, a lot of changes, a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
Anything else about the 1881 season before we wrap up today?
think that's all I got.
Okay, perfect. Well, for Jacob Vandeford, I'm Brian Partiga. This is a history of American college football, 1881.
Deuces.